Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome back to my Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly wrap-up of books, bookish things, reading, booktube, whatever it is I want to talk about. This week I wanted to start off by jumping in on a conversation that's been ongoing here on Booktube about objectivity and subjectivity in book reviewing. This subject comes up from time to time, and I'm pretty sure I've left my opinion before, but I saw that Steve Donahue had made a response video to what is really, I think, at least 4 other videos on the subject, kind of all related, and I wanted to make a response to that. So this all started when a booktuber named Michael Nip made a video in which he suggested that popularity was the only objective measure of a book, and whether or not a book was good or bad. This led to a response from Library of Alexandria, who basically called him out and said that Michael was wrong. I saw that from the channel Attention had also made a deeply philosophical response, and then thanks to Steve, I saw Average Joe's video in which he attempts to try to mathematically quantify so that we come up with an objective scale, and then I saw Steve's as well. And essentially what this boils down to is a lot of people suggesting that book reviewing is inherently subjective, that anytime we review a work of art, like a piece of fiction, that is an inherently subjective thing, and that objective reviewing isn't really possible. And so being, an inveterate know-it-all, I thought I would throw my 2 cents into this discussion and talk a little bit about this. So I watched Steve's video, and I thought Steve pointed out something really important. Forgive me for looking at my notes on my phone. I thought Steve pointed out something really important, and that is that book reviewers review books from an authoritative point of view, in the sense that they are experts on books and fiction and the standards we apply to those kinds of things, and therefore his point was that since they are authoritative, not authoritarian, since they're authorities and their reviews are authoritative, then they can be objective. And he pointed out several things that are objectively bad things that we find in books. Characters being introduced late in novels, characters being introduced early to perform a specific function and then never showing up again. We all know about things like plot holes, the overuse of tropes, kind of tired stereotypes, bad writing. These are things that we clearly can evaluate, and most people think can be evaluated objectively. And Steve's contention was that somebody with an authoritative point of view, who's read a lot of books, who's done a lot of reviewing, somebody like that can certainly then review books objectively because of their kind of vast knowledge of books and fiction and things like that. And I have a tendency to agree with Steve's point of view here on that. So many of you may know that I used to be a history teacher, and I assigned essays that my students had to write and research papers they had to write, and I graded those. And on more than one occasion, a student would come up to me and say, well, I think your grading was just subjective. And to avoid that kind of controversy, what I learned to do, and what lots of teachers who grade essays learn to do, is that you create a rubric for grading. Specifically the things that you're looking for, the things, it can be even as specific as what you'll count off points for, etc. And you create this rubric. In other words, you create a standard by which you are going to grade every single essay or every single research paper. And if you stick to that standard, then you can grade the research papers objectively. Because what a lot of students really point was with me when they suggested I was being subjective and not objective is that I was grading their paper badly because it had some bias against them. Well, if you have this rubric which you've established, you have a set of standards by which you can, as the grader, you can justify the grade. In other words, you can use that set of standards to objectively grade the paper. Well, I was able to create those rubrics and come up with that idea for what I was looking for because I was the authority on American history in that classroom, and I was the authority on what I expected to see in an essay. And so I could create that standard. So to kind of back up what Steve was saying, as a book reviewer with lots of experience, that person is an authority, and therefore they can create a set of standards by which they judge all books. And if they judge all books by that set of standards, then that is, in fact, objective. They are not judging each book individually. They have a set of standards which they have in their head probably, which they apply when they read books. And that is objective reviewing. You know, we have a tendency to think that objective reviewing means that, you know, you can't have any preference or bias at all. And I don't necessarily think that's true, and this may be where Steve and I kind of diverge. What I think is that good reviewers have a set of standards, have a rubric, if you will, even though it's not that defined, but have a rubric, if you will, by which they review books. But that set of standards is probably somewhat personal to them. So in other words, their set of standards is not like another critic's set of standards. You know, if they were, then every critic would come to the exact same opinion when applying that set of standards objectively. So to me, where the bias might come in, where the subjectivity might come in, is in the creation of that set of standards and the creation of that rubric. I mean, how many times when you were in high school or college did you just, you know, wish you were in another teacher's class because they graded easier or because they did this instead of that? You know, we have our preferences and we fit into that, and we like some people's standards better than others. Well, I think critics come up with their own set of standards. They're probably closely related to one another, but their standards are a little bit different from critic to critic. This then might lead you to believe, well, you just contradicted everything you said, because if you have your own set of standards that you've created, then that is somewhat subjective. But again, you're missing the point. Objectivity doesn't mean that everybody's going to come up with the same opinion, that there is a way which we can quantify mathematically and get to a conclusion that this is definitely a 5-star book. You know, that there's no way around it. That really isn't what objectivity means. To me, objectivity means a reviewer who applies the same set of standards over and over again. And if you then pay attention, read those reviews or watch those people's videos, then you get a sense of what their standards are, and you can decide if their standards meet your standards, if what they say you find to be true, and then you can choose to which critics you listen to, just like we choose which booktube channels we have a tendency to watch. But that is still objective because they are applying an objective set of standards, their own, and as long as they apply it consistently over and over again, then that is, to me, objective reviewing. You know, we're not talking about timing a race, and we're not talking about grading a paper, but we can create those standards, and again, if those standards are applied consistently, then that is objectivity. That there isn't going to be one set of standards that every single reviewer uses, but they're probably similar, and as long as each reviewer sticks to that set of standards and is objective in applying those set of standards, then that really is objective reviewing. Now, one of the things that obviously happens over time is that those standards change. So, you know, a reviewer who is in, let's say, his mid-50s might have a set of standards which seem out of step with contemporary literature as reviewed by a reviewer in their 20s. But there's still a set of standards, and if they apply them consistently, that is, in fact, objectivity to me. And so that's those are my thoughts about that. I hope that made sense. I have a tendency to get started on these things and kind of go off on tangents, and I'm not sure they actually make sense. So then on to weekly reading. So I've been reading 3 books this week. I finished a book which I had kind of been reading for some time. I finished Gone with the Wind. I started reading Gone with the Wind earlier this month after making my Dead Racist author reviews. I decided to read Gone with the Wind, and I finished that, and I will be leaving a full review and discussion or making a full review and discussion of that book, which will go up sometime next week, either Tuesday or Thursday, because I definitely have things to say. I don't necessarily want to say them here, because I want to make sure I say them all. I want to make sure I'm clear about everything I wanted to say about that. I've also been reading. I also begun reading the a memoir by Esmeralda Santiago called When I Was Puerto Rican. I haven't gotten very far in that, but I've enjoyed the imagery and the ideas and descriptions of the writing in that. And then kind of as a palate cleanser from Gone with the Wind, I picked up Love and Summer by William Trevor and started reading that because William Trevor is one of those authors who I can go to their work and I know that what I'm going to find, I know what I'm going to find almost always, and I know what I find is going to be beautiful and moving and quiet and keenly observed and brilliantly written. If you've, again, I say this over and over again, if you've never read William Trevor, please do. Because I just think he was just a beautiful, a masterful writer who created beautiful characters and situations and just incredibly powerful prose with a style of his own. You're not going to find a lot that's innovative here. As a matter of fact, when Trevor's innovative is when I haven't seen his life the least. You're not going to find experimental stuff here, but you're going to find somebody who is a keen observer of humanity and had a real ability to capture those kind of quiet things about human beings and communicate those on the page. And this has been just really great. It's a short novel. It's only about 200 pages, and the print's really big, so it probably would actually be shorter than that. But I really have been enjoying that. And I think if I get through all those books by next Thursday, which is the end of September, then I will have read everything I want to read. Oh, I forgot. I'm also listening to, I'm listening to F. Scott Fitzgerald, F. Scott Fitzgerald's second novel, The Beautiful and Damned. I'm listening to that on audiobook through LibriVox, and I'm really enjoying that. One of the weird kind of serendipity, synchronicity things is that one of the main characters in William Trevor's Love and Summer is also reading F. Scott Fitzgerald, The Beautiful and Damned, and there's some lines from The Beautiful and Damned in the book, and I'm like, wow, I'm reading that at the same time, which really seems kind of strange, that kind of connection between my life and fiction. I'm nothing like the character here. He's charming and, anyway, young. But I really have been enjoying F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Beautiful and the Damned. It is, I think, the definition of overwritten. I read a lot of Hemingway, and Fitzgerald here in The Beautiful and Damned is the exact opposite of Hemingway. There's no thought that's left unexplained. There's no emotion that isn't written out. There's no scene or description that isn't done to the T. There's, it is that way. I'm about 2/3 the way through now, and I'm enjoying it. But I can see why the novel really wasn't necessarily all that popular with critics and wasn't as popular as Fitzgerald's first novel, This Side of Paradise. I can see why. This is a long novel, and it could have used, no offense, Maxwell Perkins, it could have used some better, more aggressive editing to take some of these things out. And I didn't, I don't know why I didn't know this, but of all of Fitzgerald's novels, this one seems to be kind of most clearly a description of his own feelings about his marriage to Zelda. They're, the main character here and his wife do bear some resemblance, at least in their partying activities, to Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald. And The Beautiful and the Damned contains a lot of that kind of party lifestyle of the Fitzgeralds, transposed back to the 1915, 1916 from the 1920s. But it's been an enjoyable read. I'm not sure it would be for everybody, but it has been enjoyable. So that's what I've been reading, and I should be able to finish all those. Also, I'm still doing a buddy read with Mary and Ryan of Isabella Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Suns. Again, we're reading about 50 pages a week, and that's been going great. Really enjoying that. Excellent book here, and enjoying the slow buddy read and getting to talk to Marion about that book. Anyway, I don't have any musical selections for you this week. I don't know why, but I really haven't been listening to anything different than I've kind of shared with you before. So I think I'm just going to let that be the Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. Look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.